HarperCollins presents Magic, the Final Fantasy Collection by Isaac Asimov. Read by William Hope. Introduction by the publishers. Asimov? Fantasy? As almost everyone on our planet knows, Isaac Asimov was the most prodigiously talented, productive, and renowned science fiction writer who ever lived. As everyone perhaps doesn't know, he also delighted himself and his readers by writing fantasy stories throughout his 50-year career. Like the great Victorians, whom he so admired and so resembled in both seriousness and industry, Isaac Asimov wrote to entertain as well as to instruct, to puzzle, to divert, and sometimes simply to charm or to dazzle. Asimov's fantasies were as often written to justify a pun as to illustrate a point. But they invariably honored his deepest tendencies toward rationalism and logic. Even his wizards were logicians. Even his dragons obeyed the laws of thermodynamics. And like the great Victorians, Asimov worked at his writing desk until the day he died. We have thought it a fitting memorial, therefore, to complete the monumental task at which he labored all his life, and to assemble in one volume for the last time all the uncollected fantasy stories he wrote during his enormously productive career. Many are whimsical, others are elevating, but all are entertaining, and all reveal another fascinating side to the protean figure that was Asimov. Also included on a more serious but hardly somber note are the critical essays he wrote on the subject of fantasy. Toward the end of his days, Isaac Asimov was concerned with the prospects and condition of his beloved field of science fiction, well aware that it had become inseparably linked with fantasy, both in the marketplace and in the public's imagination. Indeed, it was only shortly after his death that the Science Fiction Writers of America, the organization he helped found and nurture, officially became the Science Fiction and Fantasy Writers of America. In the essays collected here for the first time, Asimov expresses his hopes and fears for this marriage, which was one of convenience as well as love, and explores as only he can the shifting, permeable, but very real border between the two realms. Finally, and most appropriately, we have included Isaac Asimov's previously uncollected articles that range beyond the formal field of fantasy to touch on such unscientific subjects as luck and immortality, biblical astronomy, the universe's ultimate fate, and America's prospects for survival. A fantasy the good doctor hoped not. It is our hope that this farewell collection of Asimov's best-loved fantasies and writings on fantasy will take its place on the shelf as a companion to Gold, Asimov's final science fiction collection. Together, they form an integral and essential part of his legacy. In one of his essays, Asimov quotes his friend Arthur C. Clarke's famous dictum that science sufficiently advanced is indistinguishable from magic. The same might be said of the good doctor's own delightful tales, that occasional fantasy, gracefully presented by a masterful writer who happens to be a scientist, is, well, magic. The Publishers. Part 1. The Final Fantasy Stories. To your health. I sneezed. George drew himself away and said austerely, "Another cold?" I blew my nose without doing myself much good and said, my voice rather muffled by the tissue, "Not a cold, sinusitis." I stared at the remains of my coffee as though it were its fault that it had had no taste. I said, "This is the fourth flare-up of my sinusitis in the course of a year, and each time I lose my sense of smell and taste for a shorter or longer length of time." "Right,"
Sample complete. Ready to continue?